everyone. My name is Grygoiry. I am VP of Engineering at Heycar. Appreciate your interest in my talk and the topic. So, engineering a product for diverse markets. What does it actually mean? Well, there are products and services which works well nearly for everyone. So probably many of you are using Slack or Zoom or Google Docs, Google Slides. These products are done globally and they work for many people at the same time. On the other hand, not every product can be like that. So there are products that require a high degree of personalization and basically adaptation to a given market or given target audience. So the product where one solution doesn't quite fit to everyone. So in my talk, I'm going to show some examples where this is the case, and especially where this is the case for my company, Heycar. So a few words about us. So we are a digital car marketplace, and the part of our mission that is most inspiring for me is basically to make search for used vehicles as convenient, as stress-free as possible for all the users. And on this journey, we actually encountered a couple of good challenges when basically launching our product in various markets across Europe. So we realized that basically to make our product successful, we need to make quite few adaptations for the local market specifics. And in my career, it's not actually the first time where I had to think about this challenge. So somehow this challenge following me for a couple of years. So I was working at other companies of a different scale. So I was, for example, a head of engineering at eBay. I was working also on a technical track as a principal engineer or as a software architect across industries like fintech and commerce. It was actually exciting to see how different, the product that should serve what kind of the same purpose can look different on different markets. So in this talk, I'm gonna share my technical learnings. I'm gonna share my organizational learnings, basically how to make this happen, how to make this work. I'll be using some examples from the Heycar product and from the cars industry. So let's get into that. So before we talk about the digital product, it will be interesting to have a look at, for example, car markets in general. So it was very surprising to me to find out which vehicle, which make and model is the most popular in different countries. So let's take, for example, Italy. So the most popular vehicle in Italy is the Fiat 500. Well, I can definitely imagine myself driving Fiat 500 somewhere in Italian cities with a small narrow streets, trying to find a parking place somewhere in Rome. It's definitely a convenient vehicle that is also coming from an Italian brand. So I can definitely understand why many people prefer a Fiat in Italy. Another example, Canada. So that was probably one of the biggest surprises for me, as for the person who was living in Europe the entire life. I didn't see so many pickups across the streets. But in Canada, surprisingly enough, Ford F-150 is the most popular car. Well, definitely there are many people living on the countryside. So, for example, farmers will be very happy to drop their farming equipment in the pickup and drive around Canada. Well, Middle East, United Arab Emirates. So that's Toyota Land Cruiser. Well, it's probably fun to take your all-wheel drive SUV and go, for example, through dunes Bashan, somewhere near Dubai. So that's probably where Toyota Land Cruiser can be the best fit. Also, you know that oil price is relatively cheap comparing to the other costs of living. So basically the fuel economy is a different concern. You can definitely have a look on the SUVs in those countries. Netherlands. I was quite surprised when I arrived to Amsterdam a couple of years ago to see in the airports so many Teslas already working as taxis. Also, government gives some support for the electric vehicles, and electric vehicles are getting some traction in that market. And Tesla Model 3 is already the most popular vehicle in that country. Well, you may say those are very different geographical locations, but what if my product is, for the European market? And what if my product is not like a digital one, not a physical product, but a digital product? So I'd like to show you the two different versions of the same widget that you can find on Hey Car landing page. So just to give you a recap, so we enable you to search for your dream car. So when you land on our website, we want you to show this quick search functionality. And this quick search functionality will look quite not the same in Netherlands and France, for example. Well, obviously, one big reason you can already see that the language is different, right? And not many of you are probably fluent in both Dutch and French, neither am I. So let me help you and show you the already translated English version of those widgets. So here how it looks like. So we named one obvious difference, which is the language. But there are some more differences on this page. So we can see there is an additional field, for example. So basically in the Netherlands version of this form, we have brand, we have make, we have price range. In French version, we have a location in addition. So that's basically because our French offer is slightly different to our Netherlands offer, which is basically driven by the market conditions. So in Netherlands, we are offering our vehicles in an online retail model where you can order it online, while in France, we are collaborating a lot with the trusted dealers, where you can basically find the location that is convenient for you and also go and see the vehicles by yourself. So therefore, the zip code is very important, for example, on the very first stage of interaction of our product. Some other differences. You can see the text is different. So it's not just the translation, actually. It's way more. So it's actually a different message to the customer and a different opportunity that we are trying to sell here. So basically, the first one is making a highlight on the warranty conditions. The other is making a highlight on selected dealers. So probably these are the messages that were selected by our business teams to basically get a feedback from the customer in the best manner. Another small difference, which is very important, the car is different. So it's also an aspect of localization. So localization is not only about the translation, but to make feel your product local. So basically you can see there is a Mini Cooper. While Mini Cooper is a decent car, to make it more French, it might be reasonable to put, for example, Renault Clio on this slide. So Renault is a French car, and it will definitely make feel the French version of our website more French. So these are the small differences that add up. And this was just one widget to illustrate an example. So how these differences can be implemented on the technical level. I'll show you a quick code example. So basically, this is a TypeScript definition, but it's not really important which language I'm using here. So the question is, how would you implement this small difference that some countries will have a zip code in their search functionality, some won't have this. Let's start from the backend side of things. So when the search request, the entity I'm showing right now, arrives, you will have different fields. And how you should reflect the zip code? Well, you can just mark it as optional with that question mark that you can see there. So basically, you don't have to say, okay, is this zip code present in Netherlands market, or is this present in French market? Well, your backend maybe don't need to care at all about this part. You can try to basically not to introduce this localization or this knowledge in your code base as long as possible. While this maybe is possible on the backend side of things, well, this might be challenging in the front end because you definitely need to render it on the screen for the user. So basically, therefore, you basically see here an example of a React component. Again, I'm not a front-end expert by myself. Maybe many of you are not as well. So it's not about the React. It's just basically a very simple component example. So you can see a panel, you can see a make model filter, you can see basically a zip code filter. And this syntax is showing like, please render the zip code filter if I pass you the parameter zip code filter. And then basically somewhere else in your code base, you can add a configuration and configure basically how your components should look like depending on the market. So this is an example where basically introducing this knowledge into your code base is already unavoidable. Well, let's have a look on another example. Let's imagine you click this search button, you get to the listings page results, and you will see another big panel. So with many more filter options where you can nail down your search with a specific mileage of the vehicle or about the year when the vehicle was produced. How this look different? Well, it also looks different in various markets. So you can see basically in the Netherlands version, we still don't have the location filter present. Price is on the first spot. Then the next important thing is brand and model of the car. Well, in French market, it's different. Like we discussed, the location is very important, so it comes first. Next, price is very important. But then, for example, year is a more important in this market than brand and model. And we are able to personalize this product for the market. And basically, how you could implement this on a technical level. Just think quickly if you are given this task as an engineer. I bet most of you would come up with a very, very straightforward solution. So basically, you would create a component that would represent the Netherlands version of the form with the order of the filters, like you see on the screen, price filter, brand filter. Well, and you can create the other component, which is basically giving you the order of the components that should be present in the French markets. It's a very straightforward and simple solution. But what if differences are even larger? You can have an entire flow or entire part of the product working only in a given market. For example, here I'm showing you a part of our product in Germany that is allowing you to sell your own car. So we found a very good partnership. So we built this process, and it's not necessary to translate it or go into details. You can just see there is like an entire form. It also, like, if you will click next, it will show you some next steps. So it's an entire business process that is local. So to sum it up, well, if you are an engineer implementing those localizations, you will come up with one of those three options. Well, either you will have to implement just a small local condition, like the location zip code filter. You can encapsulate it inside one component. Then you can create basically a local component version for your market. For example, the one for France, the one for Netherlands. Or even you can go further and introduce an entire local page or entire flow. So this is how localization or making your product personalized for different user needs looks like in practice. If we zoom up for a bit, so basically what this can look like on a scale, like imagine you are a backend engineer. So this picture would reflect your maybe microservices structure, or maybe you have a monolithic application. So this would reflect your packages structure. So if you are more like working with the front end, maybe that's reflecting your component structure. So a well-designed product that supports this localization, in my point of view, should definitely support modularization. In this way, you can see clearly, like, there are some market agnostic components that would work in any market, and there are some country-specific components that would work in a specific market. And you can see this clarity. Okay, it's clear. I have a component that is global. Hey, I have a component that is local. And you can basically zoom in and zoom out. So you go into your microservice, for example, and you find there also like a package that is global implementation, package that is local implementation. And in this way, you can more easily navigate your code base. What happens if, let's say, one market is getting too specific? And basically, you have a bit more local components for one given market. Well, there is definitely a need and desire to reuse our work across different implementations and across markets. But what if one basically is getting too specific? Well, at some point, you may decide, okay, It's too expensive to try to make it global and so configurable because the code base grows, the amount of use case grows. Why I don't separate this application or this microservice in a separate one and I keep all these local specific use cases in there? So that can help. But it's definitely not a solution you should start with because it's way easier to separate the functionality or like fork it even, then try to merge it afterwards. So be very careful with this decision. Well, of course, you can go even further if you see that you are working for some very different user groups and you say their use cases do not overlap much. Well, then you basically can introduce even separate components or separate web products per market, per region, or per user group. I'm using a lot in this talk the word market or country, but actually many of the concepts I share, they also apply. For example, for different categories of the goods. So for example, if you're about to offer a marketplace for cars, well, you may have a different need to offer a marketplace for bicycles or a different marketplace for boats. Maybe mileage is not so important when you are trying to buy or sell a bicycle when it is about the car. Well, I'm not sure if there are yachts which are plug-in hybrid, so maybe when you are selling or buying a boat, you need slightly different filters. And that is an example where you can introduce different products even for different user groups or different microservices. The other thing is invisible localization, or how to make your product work in different regions. And that is all about latency. So what should you know about latency optimizations? Over the years, products are getting faster and latency is playing a key role here. So basically, Google, for example, introduced a Core Web Vitals standard, which is saying that, okay, how fast your components can render, that would also affect your search results relevancy ranking on Google. So how you can implement the latency improvements fast? So the first solution would be like to look at what cloud providers could offer. So network, so-called cloud network acceleration. So CDN, content delivered network, is one example. The other one would be like programs like cloud network acceleration, where basically the entry point to your system is placed close to the end user. And once the traffic hits this entry point, next goes through this accelerated network of the cloud providers or different solution providers to your main system deployment. But this can be not enough, and you may want also to consider multi-regional deployments, especially if your system is serving very different regions across the globe. So you basically may have this network acceleration part, but in addition, you may also consider like the multi-region deployment in there. And basically your data, your services will be serving the traffic from different regions and giving the response to your end users faster. And multi-region architecture can go well hand in hand, especially if you are building slightly different products or you have slightly different offerings in different markets. So you can combine like having an isolated deployment in a region with also having a dedicated product in that region, which is optimized for latency, for user experience. And in this way, you are actually offering the best out of both worlds to your end customers. So to sum up the technical part, as long as your differences of the markets grow, so can grow the complexity of your technical solution. You can start with just having a global product, global technical implementation, and just do the localization. At next level, you can basically start introducing some local components first. Well, maybe one specific functionality that will serve some target audience better. Next, if this amount of localization grows, well, you should start seeing that your product becomes more local than global, while you still can reuse things between markets. So you can introduce a local product with some of the global components. And if the differences are that huge, it might be the best decision to just build different local products. How you can make all of those decisions right? It's not a trivial thing. And in my opinion, the key enabler to make those decisions with the best precision possible is to understand your customers, for whom you're actually building the product. And we know your customers, for example, in my examples, they can be geographically distributed. In the other example, they will be just different user groups. For example, you can build a different car search product for car enthusiasts, professionals that want every single bit being compared towards the other people who just want, for example, a family car upgrade. So to be able to understand your customers better, it's essential to connect three bits together. Engineering, product, and design should work well connected with the other part of organization, with the business team, who is talking to your customers as well, who is also like having maybe sales conversations, partnership agreements. But engineering, product, and design should be also connected to the customer directly. So you should also maybe consider like observing or participating in user interviews, reading directly the user feedback, or at least talking to your customer care team. So to make this really efficient and work in synergy, it's essential basically to take into consideration all the three parts. And frequently when basically an organizational structure is discussed, it's discussed engineering, how we should structure our engineering teams, while we may leave outside of the discussion how the rest of organization is functioning. But I believe it's important to make the design of your organization, engineering, in synergy with the rest. So it's important to think how the rest of the business team is structured. So usually you would have roles like customer care, the front line of your customer, sales team, trying to offer maybe some B2B solutions, business development, people thinking about partnership and how the different KPIs should evolve, or marketing, basically advertising your products, thinking about your brain, your campaigns. Well, how does the business side of organization usually react to challenges of multiple markets? Well, the common solution I've seen is actually to make this team closely connected to the markets and to the users. So some part of the team can be also based in different locations that are close to the customer. Obviously, many people like customer care or sales, they need to speak to the customer in a native language. So that is an important part of their organization. Well, in some cases, you can go even further and make like your organization more distributed. Like our world is definitely becoming more remote friendly, and you may want to place your organization close to the customers, so in different locations, including your business team, marketing team. Or you can go for a hybrid approach, and you can have basically your business people also like as a part of more global organization in also in the markets and in the modern world where we are way more remote friendly these days is definitely an option. So we say basically our customers can be in different locations. Our business team or our overall organization can be distributed and also placed close to different locations. The question is, what about engineering? Should this be also a pattern? I would start with the best practices of how it's common to structure engineering teams. And I would refer to a definition from the book Team Topologies by Matthew and Manuel. The definition of different team topologies. And the one is that is like a key element of organization is stream aligned cross-functional teams, where you have your engineering function, like your front-end engineers, back-end engineers, maybe infrastructure people, placed together with your product manager, with the designer in so-called vertical functional stream-aligned teams. So in my car industry example, that would be, for example, a classifieds business responsible for creating listings. So they share all the KPIs. That would be, for example, the leasing business. So how we can make the best offer to the customer and how we can make this part of the business a success. Entire team is focused on the same product goals. Financing, so how we can enable the customer with the financial options to finance the vehicle. Should we stop only at engineering, at product, when we talk about cross-functional teams? Well, if there are so many benefits that people are working closely and aligned and there are less boundaries, you basically people with the same goal in a virtual team. So maybe the same benefits could apply to other functions. So the one great setup I observed at Heycar is actually having a concept of verticals working in a cross-functional manner. So basically, when you see that you are one team also with business development folks, when you also involve your customer care in the discussions how to solve user problems, so the entire organization is focused on the same goals. Now the question how this model can also work with different country specifics. Probably the most common solution is to say, okay, so we have engineering, we have different teams. Let's say we have this financing team that is focused on different financial offers to basically afford the vehicle. You can implement global functionality in this team, while you can also implement the country specifics in this team. So you basically build an expertise in one domain. And this would be probably the most common setup most companies would strive for and would go for. And it's a great option. If you have a lot of market specifics and the amount of those colorful boxes in your architecture is high, and you have a lot of local component in your business, you may consider also having a local focused engineering teams in your organization. So you can have, for example, a team which is taking care of the UK market. So the team that is making local integrations with local financing providers, that is making the user experience optimizations for this market. While there are also the teams that are focusing on global functionality in the very same domain. And it's actually not black and white, so you don't have to pick up one option strongly. You can go and mix it up. So, for example, you can have a global team that is taking care of the classifieds domain of your business. You can have a local teams interacting more in the domains where it makes sense to be more local. What is important, however, is that you also optimize for organizational synergies, for cognitive mental overhead of your teams, so that your teams doesn't have to talk to all the teams around, but maybe just be in synergy with also the rest of the organization. So let's say if your organization has, for example, market teams, like if you have business development in markets, it might be a good idea also to introduce a local team in engineering. And then basically they will work hand in hand together on finding the best solution for your customers. So in my view, if you look on organizational perspective, so introducing local component can be necessary. And basically the decision, should you structure your teams around local component, the one aspect should be also how the rest of the organization is functioning for the overall efficiency. Should this be the only concern? I would say tech is another important one. So if we are talking about addressing these localizations efficiently, there are basically three components. How you develop your product, how do you organize your engineering team, and how your organization is working. This is actually changing with how your market differences grow. I think most of the global products with very low degree of market differentiation, they basically start with global implementation with some localization. They are working in stream-aligned teams around the domains. And the overall organization has a more central function. Well, when there is a bit more market differences that you have to address and you have to personalize product for the market way more, then you start introducing local components. Your stream-aligned teams can have already some local representation. For example, you can have a product function that is supporting you on the market side of things. And your organization maybe also need to have some local presence, for example, to have your sales team in the market close to the customer. If you go one level up, well, we will see basically that local with global component can be the right choice. Your products get way more local. You can still reuse and build some functionalities global, but major part will be already local. And this is probably the stage where you should start thinking about global and local teams. And this is probably the stage where your entire organization will be very well represented by those local teams. And in the most radical scenario, in terms of degree of localization towards the market needs, you can go and just go with different products. Then probably having totally different products, it's a good idea have just also like dedicated local teams that are focusing on a specific product. And also your organization can look and function more like separate entities focused on those local market needs. Basically, it's not necessary always to go level by level in my point of view, but this should be somehow in synergy. So you probably shouldn't go with like very global implementation, but then very local and distributed focused organization. That would be just hard to bridge and make it work together. And that would be probably the main message of my talk. I'd like to thank you a lot for the attention. And please, if you have any questions or any feedback, just let me know on Twitter or LinkedIn or GitHub. I promise to get back to you with every single feedback and question. Thank you so much and have a great day.